quite a bit before the halfway point, so we can just generate a little more material before we have it. It also means, when we do that, since I'm going to guarantee you that everything that is on the midterm will be on the final, and we will give you back your midterms, the corrected midterms to keep. So the more, the longer we wait for the midterm, the less material gets generated after the midterm. That doesn't mean that material that took place before the midterm that didn't show up on the midterm or on the quiz, that doesn't mean that's not going to be necessarily not on the final. Because it can be. We can draw from things in earlier chapters or in earlier lectures or any of the quizzes or any of the midterms. So the point is, in addition to keeping up with, or catching up with where we are with the reading and kind of keeping your notes in mind from the lectures, also at intervals, a couple times a week, be reviewing the other stuff. Look it over, look at the notes you wrote and the things you highlighted in the book and the things that stood out. Because we're not really looking to check things. I'm trying not to write things that are the likely candidates just for short-term memory. I'm trying to test things that once you get it, probably I could ask you about it if you really got it. I could ask you next year, the year after, and you'd be able to intelligently discuss things that you can hang on to that are like, oh yeah, I remember hearing that in class. But no, you're not going to remember if I quote some theorist, or if I tell you that it's the parietal lobe or the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex where something occurs. You don't have to memorize it. That just helps me to think about what I'm saying, and some of you that are biology students or you have an interest in brain science, you might write it down and look it up, because it is kind of cool to start figuring out how you actually operate, but it's not a neuroscience course. So if I say something like that, or I tell you some theorist or theologian, usually, unless I make a point of it, that's not the point. The point is getting the principle, the thing that you can use, what's practical, okay? Now, you should know who it is I'm talking about if I mention the author of one of the textbooks on the quiz. I don't want to have to tell you who wrote the textbook. You should figure out your textbook a little bit, read the front matter, and at least know what you're spending the whole term reading. We were talking about the last week, and even more, we were talking about some stuff that is unusual and that challenges a normal schema, a normal kind of operating system of common sense. That can seem absurd, and it can seem like, what does this have to do with anything about my spirituality? Well, what it has to do with your spirituality is, it turns out we need to back up, we need to put our brain car in reverse, and we need to kind of back way up, and we need to take sort of not the same side street that our culture has put us all on. We need to be aware of it, but we need to back up and get onto a more main highway, something that's actually less restrictive, something that's got less prejudices in it. We have a tendency, when we think something is true, to discount, or it doesn't even register when we hear or see things that don't fit in that model. The kind of spirituality that we see described for Jesus does not fit into our Western schema as something that really happens. It fits into our Western schema as something we see when we go see a Harry Potter movie. It fits into our Western schema when we read a children's book that has magic in it. It fits into the schema when we see movies about things like spiritualism or science fiction that we know is too fantastic to be even prophetic. That means that you can talk about it, and you can hear somebody tell stories about it, but it means, as long as that's the case, you can't do it. You can't do any of those things. They're not for you. Now, that's okay. It's not going to, in my opinion at least, the way the Bible is written, in my opinion also, the way that Seventh-day Adventism models salvation, it's not going to mean you're going to hell instead of heaven. Doesn't mean you're going to limbo or you're going to God's just going to forget about you when he comes back. Because you don't need any kumbaya, touchy-feely, Aladdin and his magic carpet kind of stuff in order to go to heaven. That's just a gift. You don't have to be like an Adventist shaman to get that arranged. You don't have to be any special spiritual champion. You just need to accept it, and basically there is a concept of being safe to save. At some point, it needs to be without forcing your will. Whatever it's going to be like when sin is gone, for you to be there, or me to be there, we need to be not the next source of it starting back up. When do you have any firefighters here? Okay, so when you go to a fire and you put it out, you don't see any more smoke, you don't see any more flames, then you just roll hoses, put the gear together, and head off, right? So 45 minutes after there's a structure fire, and you get it full out, you pull some drywall and stuff, and you go home. That's not how it works, is it? No, you stay there for overhaul, sometimes into the night. You make sure that it is dead out, and then you babysit it. You might release whoever came from mutual aid, right? Yeah. But then you at least some of the folk are going to be sticking around for a long time. If not, it will reignite, and it'll then really be going, because what happens is it smolders in the rafters, it smolders in the walls, it smolders in the substructure in the basement, under the floor, and then when it rekindles, it's in one big boom because it's had a chance to just set itself up like roots all over the structure, right? Mm-hmm. And sin is a concept, and sin is an operating system, and sin is kind of like a virus that affects the operating system. So, if it was the case that I was not willing to be repaired by the help desk or by the techies in my insides, if I'm saying, no, you're not taking that, you'd be taking who I am, then it's not a place where I'd be happy. Whatever is going to happen after sin is gotten rid of, I wouldn't be happy there, because the things that make life worth living for me wouldn't be available. Except they would in me, and then I would have affiliates before long. So it's not something you need to do in order to not go to hell. It's something that in our heart of hearts, in our value system, even though there's this part of us that's going, man, I wish I could get rid of that part. My gosh, what am I going to have to do to get rid of that part of me? You got to be willing to have that thing fixed. If somebody's an IT person, they graduate from PUC with an IT degree. I don't know if they have it anymore. Do we have it? I don't think we even have a computer major, do we? Okay, they graduate from Walla Walla with an IT degree. And then they're in the Starbucks. and you're there with your MacBook Pro, and someone else is there with their iPad, and the person is looking at what you're doing, and they're looking over everyone's shoulder that's trying to work, and they go, that's not right. And they get their hands on your keys. See, that's just not, it's not how it works, and it's not how God is willing to work either. However, if they looked over and said hi to you and said, how you doing? Oh, good, good. I'm really happy I just graduated from Walla Walla with my computer science degree. They go, you're a computer scientist? Yes. Would you mind helping me with this? Oh, sure, I'd love to. Here's my card, let me see. And it's a whole different arrangement then. Very similar. It isn't loving to just get into people's business when they're not really, immediately threatening you and correct their whole way of life. It's not loving. So God wouldn't do that, or God wouldn't be loving. If God would do that, then we're all better off just going to hell. Think that through. If God would be non-loving, if absolute power and absolute knowledge was unloving, and freedom wasn't an issue, we may as well just, when we die, we'd be better off if that's it. That's it. Because there is stuff that's worse than death. There are times when death is preferable to certain things, and that would be one of them. So it is not necessary to have this over-the-top extra stuff that kind of colors outside the lines spiritually in order for you to have a regular Christian life and go to heaven. Be in the earth when it's recreated. That's my belief. That's the belief of the Seventh-day Adventist version of scriptural interpretation. It's supported by what Ellen White says. Now, is there a spiritual life for people who don't want anything extra? They just want the regular vanilla kind of spirituality. There absolutely is. And does it do you any good? It does. And it's very regular. The thing is, though, most people, even people who come from Seventh-day Adventist homes, are walking away from it and saying, there's nothing here. Not everybody. Not everybody. If it's all there was, it would be okay for me. I mean, I would wish there was more, but I wouldn't choose nothing over just kind of our regular rituals in the Adventist church, because they're real good for me. I'm really used to them, and they weren't forced on me. They were something I went and got on my own, and they have great meaning, and they were contextualized for me in this broader kind of coloring outside the lines motif. From the start, they felt like something extra and not something regular for me. They felt really special right away. But they even came to a point for me where they weren't answering what I needed answered. It would have been fine in this context that I'm describing. When I found myself at that place, it would have been fine if I could have used the regular stuff that I've been used to since I became an Adventist, and especially since I became a pastor. But I was situated where that was against the law, where I couldn't use those things. I couldn't tell people about the love of God. I couldn't give them a Steps to Christ. I couldn't read to them from Mark. I couldn't just put my arms around them and pray. In fact, I couldn't even hug them. I couldn't even just do this side hug thing and say, oh, God bless you, man. I couldn't do that because I was a cop. And I was working in an environment that was unlike anywhere else I'd ever done law enforcement. I mean, I started out, the first exposure I had to law enforcement was working at public safety. For 4.5 years, I worked at public safety. And at the time, actually, it was configured very differently. There was no sheriff's substation on campus. There were a lot less deputies in the county anyway, and we functioned as peace officers. I mean, we were cops, you know, canines and firearms, and when I write you a ticket, I choose whether to write you a PUC ticket or a ticket that takes your butt to the regular court. And it was a very different deal. And when the sheriff's department was too far away, they would call for mutual aid, and we would go and I secured a shooting scene out in the community within 6 months of being hired at public safety, you know, because they were staging, medical personnel were not able to go in because the shooter was still there. I went in and secured that scene, working for public safety. So it was a very different deal. They sent me through police academy and dispatch school at Sacramento Justice Training Center. Anyway, I had been working though in a community where I had the luxury as a public safety officer, if I came up on somebody that was having a bad time, I could just stop and pray with them. I worked for PUC. And so I wasn't constrained in any way. And then I was a reserve officer and chaplain at Lake Havasu City Police Department. And I could take off my reserve officer hat, so to speak, and function as a police chaplain anytime I wanted. I had permission. And I had worked as a chaplain at Tucson's Pima County Detention Facilities. And then I spent 2 years as the canine officer at Andrews University. And that allowed me, of course, to be able to stop and pray with people and share any way I wanted to, hook them up with the pastoral staff there at Pioneer Memorial, anything I needed. And then, when the next time I was in law enforcement, I was a sheriff's deputy in Gila County, Arizona, while I was pastoring in Payson and Phoenix North Valley. And there, I had permission to function, to be able to function if there was ever a conflict of my roles, to be first a pastor and then a deputy. I had permission from the state attorney general to do this weird hybrid kind of relationship. And it worked well for 5 years. So then I found myself as a sheriff's deputy in Contra Costa County. Who's from Contra Costa County here? Who's from Concord, Martinez, Walnut Creek? So nobody's here from Pinole, or not one person? Oh, you are. Where?
I used to live in Pinole.
In Pinole, okay. So you know Pinole. So anyway, I worked I worked in Lafayette for a while, I worked at Bay Point, and worked out of Richmond for most of the time. Martinez sometime. But that is not like working at public safety. It wasn't. It was not at all like working at public safety. Although I will say I was able to handle from start to finish more interesting things at public safety. I got kind of more action because when you're in a place that has 1,000 deputies, everything's all specialized. And if you're on patrol, you go come up on something. It was interesting. You secure the scene and call in some specialist, and then kind of working crowd for a few minutes, and then someone else is taking the investigation, and then it goes to the detectives. At public safety, they let you just handle your business, which was kind of cool. But I had never worked. So right out of the academy, I was working at first in the detention facilities in Martinez and in West County. And I often worked the back door, which means when the street cops would come in with whoever they'd arrested, they'd give them to me, and I process them. And so it has to be, they need their handcuffs before they go back in the car, so they had to, it took them 5 guys to get the handcuffs on, and so now we gotta get our handcuffs on. So there's always potential melee at the back door when you go from their cuffs to our cuffs, or our safety chair, or our safety garment, or whatever. And you process people, and you check them out medically, and you check them out psychologically, and you get them to have scrubs instead of the street clothes, and you make sure they shower, and then you search them like crazy to make sure they're not bringing in contraband, and then you assign them to a module. And I had never had in my life, my nervous system had never been exposed to such a river of messed up pain and mistakes and hurt and anger and violence, all just, I mean, out on patrol, you're driving around and sometimes you only get like 1 or 2 arrests the whole shift, no matter where you work. But working the back door, you've got dozens and dozens of cops that are all waiting in line for you to process their arrest. And there's just 2 or 3 of you that all the arrests that night have to funnel through for the whole county. So I had never been exposed like that to such a stream of pain and broken lives. And one shift on a graveyard on a Saturday night, Martinez PD brought in a little guy who looked like he would have been like older than I am now, but he was 19. And he looked like he maybe didn't get enough to eat growing up, so he didn't get as tall as he should have. And his skin was all ashy, like chalky gray and cracked. He was supposed to be, if he had enough oil in his skin, dark black complexion, but it was ashen. And every opening in his body was evidencing infection of some kind. And he was cracking apart, and it hurt him to just stand. His hair was nappy and pushed over off to one side, and it was full of bugs and foxtails and stuff, and crusted on dried mud and stuff. And his eyes were all completely bloodshot. I don't know what he was on. Never found out what he was on, something. But Martinez had found him completely without any clothes, with just his head under the hedges in a park in their city limits. So they brought him in for public intoxication or something. I don't know if that was even accurate, but I took him. He wasn't registered in conversation or anything like that. I took him, I put him in the shower, and I couldn't get him to clean himself, so I had to clean him with a wash rag and soap, and then take him over to mental health where he wouldn't even talk to the counselors. And the medical people were like, well, he's got a pulse, I don't know where else to start, house him. And it just, in an instant, when I got that pronouncement from medical, like it was like surveying cattle that were going to get sent to McDonald's or something, in that instant, it just kind of spilled over the top in my insides. And everybody that was coming in needed to be hugged and prayed with. That's all I knew. I needed to be able to share something to make it better, and I couldn't share anything to make anything better. And so at that point, I was overwhelmed. And it felt like I don't know how I can come back and do this again tomorrow night. And the next morning, I slept. When I got off at 6, I went home. I slept for a few hours, and then I was having to go back in late that night, of course. And I sat in the hot tub. It was kind of a gray, misty kind of a day, and I was out in the hot tub, kind of cold outside. And I was praying, I gotta be able to do something. It's not legal for me to go religious on these people. It's against the law. And it's not what we believe in. So what am I gonna do? And I was going through Mark for a couple of hours, just kind of looking at the headings, and I I came to Mark 10, and I found the story that we've already talked about in this class of the young rich guy that came to Jesus and said, what do I have to do to have, remember we talked about this? What do I have to do to have eternal life? And I knew that that did not mean, what do I have to do to get my fire insurance so I don't go to hell? Because Jesus' response obviously is not compatible with John 3:16. It's not compatible with the gospel. No, to go to heaven and not go to hell is not a matter of just keeping the commandments. So Jesus' answer to him was, well, keep the commandments, right? You know what they are. Listen, I've been doing that all my life. I actually do keep those. And so in the conversation, it's like, so you're all set, right? No, it's not what he was asking. Jesus knew that he was asking for that something that goes further than just, I want to survive. Instead of just, I want to survive, I want to more than thrive. Because he was already thriving. He was winning the game. He didn't need any more information than he already had to go to heaven. He didn't need any more information than he already had to have a really rocking kind of life. So he was winning. He had the stuff. He got the goodies. It was the going past thriving and having that stuff Jesus had. Even though Jesus only thing he owned was his clothes on his back. He didn't have property of any kind. He didn't have a car. He didn't even wear a watch. I'm pretty sure of that. And so he asked for what he could have that was more. And it says, Jesus looked at him. Well, that's kind of, given how little we have written, it's kind of a waste of letters if it's just fill in space. But I don't see anywhere where they're just trying to run down the clock. You know, parchment was too precious. And sometimes they had to pay scribes to even be writing it. So they're not going to just filibuster. There was a reason to say it. Jesus looked at him. Now we're told, and Jesus had access to these scriptures, and so did that young rich guy, that when man looks at people, when regular people look at other people, they see how people present on the outside, you know? Person, they categorize you, male, female, what's your race, how does that compare to mine, how big are you, are you powerful and smart, or are you lame and stupid, and do you wish me well? You know, do you intend to benefit me, harm me, or that's not even an issue? That's what our brain does. We run through that whole thing when we perceive somebody. And that's what it says. We demand evaluates based on but God looks on the heart. And who was Jesus? He was God. And he looked at him. So he looked at him. I don't have the gift of being able to read your thoughts as well as Jesus could read that man's thoughts. But we all actually do, unless we're somewhere a bit into the autism disorder spectrum. We actually have the capacity to read each other's minds based on inferences from even micro-expressions. That has been cataloged in the last 15 or 20 years in some cool ways. We actually can for quite a bit, and that gives us away quite a bit. And we're working on ways that we can use cool technologies to be able to read your actual thought content and to make a picture on a screen of what you're picturing in your mind's visual representation. We're on that. We're a long ways away, but we can tell that it can be done. But right now I can't do that. But there's some things I do know. When I look at you, I don't even have to wonder. If I look at you, I know that you have and I'm going to tell you what it is because I don't know exactly, but I want you to imagine you go to the dining commons today, and when you get in there and you got your food, get your little styrofoam thing or whatever they got now, and you got a can of soda, and you go sit down, and the big old, it's got the big screen up there. You still have a big TV monitor up there, computer monitor. So you sit down and you look up and you're going, excuse me? What's on the monitor is a perfect clip of the absolute last thing you would want anyone to see you doing or thinking about. The thing that makes you grossed out about you is on that screen. And it's like, well, I may as well just change schools today. What the heck? How did they do that? You don't have to say very much to let me know that you were able to come up with something that you wouldn't want up on that screen. Everybody can. Everybody can go, oh yeah, shoot. Because we all have that. We all have no trouble coming up with, well, sometimes we have big competition because there's lots of things we hate to have up there, but one of them stands out pretty much. Or one of them, two of them are going back and forth, but we have that. And when I look at you, I know you do. And you know that I do. You can. And I know when I look at you that you have already thought about recently the time when somebody heinously that should have been there for you to take care of you was who you needed to be taken care of from. Somebody hurt you that should have been the last person you would have to worry about mistreating you. And it hurts your heart, and you have thought about it very recently. In fact, probably there aren't days that go by where it doesn't intrude, and you don't have that thought, and it has the feelings that come with it. You have that. And so do I. And we can know that each other has that when we just look. Not only that, you look in the mirror, and from time to time, you look and you go, why do I have to be a person who looks like that? Why did I have to get this instead of what lots of other people look like? Why do I have to be this? Why couldn't I that? And you thought about that from the time you were little. And it gets worse as we get older. You can look at everybody and know that they have that experience. No matter what their temperament, no matter how proud they seem and how fancy they look, or even if they're a big old bodybuilder, it doesn't make any difference. Or they're a fashion model, swimsuit, cover model, doesn't make any difference. Same thing happens for everybody. And you and I know that when we look at each other, we can know that we have no trouble coming up with the biggest standout memory of when we were the jerk, of when we really hurt somebody, when we were the stupidest to someone else, when we were the most heinous to somebody, and we hurt their feelings. We hurt them, we really hurt them. Whether it was our mom, or our younger sibling, or that kid at school, or the kid in the neighborhood that wanted to be our friend, and it, you know, because there were some cooler friends, we kind of dissed them, and they found out, or we did it to their face and broke their little heart. And we haven't even stopped doing stuff like that. And what's the matter with us that we would be heinous? So if I just say to you, hey, when were you the ass? You don't have any trouble coming up with it, do you? I sure don't. I got a list. They take turns getting into the front seat. I'm riding right there next to me. And every one of us has dreams, had dreams, or has dreams, have dreams, that we're already saying, well, that's not going to happen. You might have come here and said, oh yeah, I'm going to be a full-on surgeon, and then you couldn't even pass biology high enough to ever get into medical school. So, well, I'll change my major. And 3 majors later, you're going, gee, I hope I can even graduate with this, and I'm probably not going to be able to figure out what to do with it. And there was a time, though, where you were going to be like the medical officer on the space station. And now you're rolling your eyes at how stupid that sounded. Whatever it is you kind of wish you could be, and then what you're going, and now let's think about reality. We all have that. We know the darn difference between what we love to be and what's realistic. And why someone else could be 17 and get in their doctorate and already get a NASA grant or something, and then you're going, you spend your whole childhood and into your adulthood trying to play an instrument, and there's a 3-year-old Korean girl who gets up and you're going, I can do that if I had 10 lifetimes. Why did I even bother? Jeez. When Jesus looked at the man, he knew this. And it says, it doesn't, and again, not wasting space, but making a point of saying, he loved him. He looked at him, all those ways we talked about, knew it all. And he actively loved him. Not an adjective, just describing Jesus as a loving guy. Verb, love. He did the thing. He did love to the guy. And when I saw that, something clicked. And I couldn't wait to get back to work. I was so excited to experiment and see what happened. So there's a whole group of people in Sallyport waiting to be let in because a bus came bringing these people from all over, St. Quentin Court, other jails, in a big group all chained together, and they're in the Sallyport. And I stand at the Sallyport, doors locked between us, people are swearing and shoving and threatening and gritting their teeth and doing this kind of thing and mad dogging on the deputies behind the glass. And I just stood there and I looked at each person in the Sallyport. I looked. And then I said inside, and I did the thing. I just said without moving lips, in my head, I said, I love you. To each person, just in an instant. And without one word said, the whole Sallyport was silent. We opened it to let them in after they got them all crammed in and closed the back door. And we brought them around and started taking off the handcuffs. And one older gentleman who was tatted up, I could tell he'd been even to the old Folsom because he had bricks in his tattoos. he was a lifer coming back to testify for something. And I'm taking off his handcuffs, and he took his hand and put it over my hand like this. Now that, I don't know how much you know about the culture there, but that means you get dropped right there. But he put his hand over my hand and he said, "You're some kind of a holy man, ain't you?" And I said, "I'm a deputy sheriff." And he said, "No, sir, I felt you loving on me." And then he had a tear in his eye and turned to walk away. And there was not a peep. It was like something sacred occurred with this group of dozens of people who'd been in complete chaos. And I knew I was onto something that was not regular.